Bonjour à tous et à toutes, et merci de nous retrouver en salle de presse de la Commission européenne pour notre réunion de presse quotidienne. Nous sommes le lundi 22 juin. Je suis très heureuse de vous retrouver sur IBS dans notre salle de presse virtuelle. Comme d'habitude, nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire avant de vous donner la parole pour des éventuelles questions. First, on behalf of President von der Leyen, allow me to express our sincere condolences to the people of Reading, where terrible stabbings took place over the weekend. Our thoughts are with the families and the friends of the victims in these sad and difficult times. Then allow me to share with you the agenda of President von der Leyen for this week. The President is participating as we speak right now in the 22nd Summit EU-China, which is taking place via video conference. President von der Leyen and the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, together with the High Representative Vice President Josep Borrell, are currently in discussions with the Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang, and this afternoon they will exchange with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The summit is expected to cover the very broad, comprehensive EU-China bilateral agenda. It will include trade and investment relations, climate change, human rights and sustainable development, regional and international issues, and of course, the coronavirus response and economic recovery. A press conference with President von der Leyen and the President of the European Council, Michel, is foreseen after the summit at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. You can find more information on the EU-China summit in our daily news. Then, tomorrow, the President will participate in the Conference of Presidents of the European Council, and later tomorrow, she will take part in the tripartite social summit for growth and employment, also via video conference. She will attend this summit together with Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis and with Commissioner Nicolas Schmit. The summit will focus on the contribution of the social partners to relaunching growth and employment in the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. On Wednesday, after chairing the college meeting, the President will meet Mr. Tobias Hans, the Minister President of Saarland, via video conference. And finally, on Saturday, the President will co-host the Global Goal Unite for Our Future Summit and Concert. And I'm ready to provide you more information about this event, on which we issued a press release this morning. Indeed, the Global Goal Unite for Our Future campaign, which is a milestone in the coronavirus global response pledging marathon that the President launched on the 4th of May, will culminate in a global pledging summit and a concert this Saturday. The aim of both events is to mobilize additional funding to develop and deploy coronavirus treatments, vaccines, and tests. Access to vaccines everywhere and to everyone who needs them will enable the world to overcome the coronavirus pandemic and to avoid future ones. It will also help rebuild communities which have been affected by this virus in a fair and just way. The concert will air on Saturday evening, and it will be hosted by actor Dwayne Johnson. It will include performances by various artists like Shakira, Coldplay, Usher, Jennifer Hudson, Miley Cyrus, Justin Bieber, Christine and the Queens, and others. As for the summit, it will start at 3 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, and it will include interventions by world leaders as well as international advocates, artists, and activists. You can watch the summit and the concert on the Coronavirus Global Response website of the European Commission and on all our social media accounts. More information is available as well in the daily news. J'appelle maintenant Vivian pour vous donner des renseignements sur un investissement de la politique des cohésions en Roumanie. Vivian.
La Commission a approuvé un investissement de 47 millions d'euros du Fonds européen de développement régional pour la construction et l'équipement d'un hôpital d'urgence à Cluj, en Roumanie. Il s'agit d'un hôpital à près de 850 lits, équipé d'une technologie de pointe pour assurer des soins d'urgence de meilleure qualité et l'accès à des services médicaux vitaux. Ce projet améliorera l'accès aux soins de santé pour les personnes vivant dans des zones rurales. Et en tant qu'environnement de travail, on espère que ça sera attrayant pour les médecins et les infirmières. Et comme ça, l'hôpital contribuera également à lutter contre la fuite de cerveau du personnel médical de la région. Le projet devra être opérationnel à partir de 2026. Et vous trouverez plus d'informations sur ce projet, comme d'habitude, dans nos Daily News.
Merci beaucoup, Vivian. We have finished our announcements, and now we open the floor to your questions. You know the system very well. You need to raise your hands in order for us to identify your desire to exchange with us. And once we have given you the floor, you just need to press the button speak, as the saying goes. I see that Thomas Miglerina has a question. Thomas.
Thank you. Hi. Do you have any comment on the wave of violence and incidents that took place this weekend in several countries, not just Germany? Even in Switzerland, there were some problems. There seemed to be a lot of nervousness related with the confinement and deconfinement and respect of the rules. And I know that public order is not your competence, but the rules are. So I wonder whether you have any considerations to share with us.
Thank you very much for this question, Thomas. No particular comment from the European Commission within its role. As you say, it is a responsibility for the member states to uphold order. Of course, we trust that any incidents of violence are dealt with and addressed according to the rules and the procedures in place in our member states and in Switzerland, as you mentioned it. But this is all what we can say at this stage in relation to those events. Now I see a question from Athanasios.
Thanks very much. Welcome back. It's been a while. I have a question concerning migration, but it's from a methodological, let's say, technical standpoint. We have European funds that go into the member states for migration purposes. One of them is the accommodation of migrants in Greece, let's say, for instance. These funds are flying through the UNHCR and through the UNHCR to some NGOs who practically do the allocation of the resources and produce the work on the ground. So from a technical standpoint, what is the sequencing of auditing in these kind of fund transfers? Who audits what? Whom? Who goes first? Who goes next? What is the sequence of events in this situation? Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question, Athanasios. This is one for Adalbert, who duly joined me on stage.
Indeed, Kalimera, Athanasios. So when in situations when European funds on migration are spent through the UNHCR, which is indeed frequently the case as regards the accommodation projects in Greece, it is, by the way, not the only beneficiary. We also have grant agreements with the Greek Ministry of Migration and Asylum. But when it happens via the UNHCR, it happens via a financial and administrative framework agreement that we have with UNHCR. And in these cases, the European contribution is managed in accordance with the regulations and rules of UNHCR, which is based on the understanding that these rules and regulations conform to the internationally accepted standards as regards accounting, audit, control and procurement procedures. And in this context, the implementing partners of UNHCR, such as NGOs, would then be subject to the control systems of the UNHCR and not of the European Commission. And in this case, following the financial and administrative framework agreement, the Commission would only perform audits or verification missions on UNHCR as beneficiary of the grant, and based on a sample of operations. So the actual auditing of the NGOs would sit with UNHCR as our partner.
Thank you very much, Adalbert. Are there any other questions for Adalbert as he is on stage? So I see several hands raised, and I would like to invite Tanya and Thomas, who are the next in line, to clarify whether their questions are for Adalbert or not. So basically to unraise their hands if the questions are not for Adalbert, just to clarify if there is other interest from somebody else to exchange with him. So thank you, Tanya and Thomas. And I understand that Momchil has a question for Adalbert. If that is the case, the floor is yours. Press the speak button.
Sorry, it's not for Adalbert. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm deeply sorry. So I must unraise my hand now.
Yes, thank you very much. But I think that Bart has a question for Adalbert because his hand is still raised.
Yeah, thanks. A question concerning a report by Der Spiegel and Balkan Insight that the joint action plan for the implementation of the EU-Turkey deal, December 2016, was highly influenced by McKinsey. According to the report, this was hidden. And afterwards, McKinsey was awarded a contract by EASO without following the regular procedures. So my question is this the right way, according to the Commission, to deal with such a sensitive file? Thanks.
Thank you, Bart. Adalbert?
Thank you very much, Bart. So I have indeed had the opportunity to see this article, and from what I understand, there is a number of allegations and reports in this article about things that have or allegedly have taken place a few years back. And as a result, I will need a little bit more time to have a proper look into it in order to provide a good response. But if that's okay with you, I will just come back to you as soon as we have done that.
Okay, thank you, Adalbert. Are there any other questions for Adalbert? So this is the opportunity for the colleagues to raise their hands if they wish to exchange with him. I see no other hands raised, so thank you, Adalbert. Then we go back to questions on other topics, and the first on my list was Tanya. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Tanya, the floor is yours. Hey, hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yes, we can hear you well. It's Tanya Milevska from the Macedonian News Agency. I think it's a question for Anna, probably, regarding the elections in Serbia yesterday. I would like to know, first of all, so there's a tweet by the commissioner which doesn't mention at all anything related to the boycott of the elections by the opposition. I would like to know what is the difference for the Commission between the elections in Serbia and in North Macedonia when it comes to inclusiveness, because the commissioner was very, very insistent on having inclusive elections in North Macedonia, which he doesn't mention in the case of Serbia. And also when it comes to the ODIHR mission on observation, there was not a full media monitoring in Serbia, whereas there will be one in North Macedonia. So I would really like to know what are these double standards about when it comes to elections in these two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I will invite actually Peter to answer your question.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the question. Tanya, you know the established practice that we do not comment on the elections before the assessment by ODIHR or OEC or the election observation mission. In case of Serbia, we are following exactly the same practice. So we will be commenting on those elections later today. There is publication of the preliminary statement by the OEC or their special election assessment mission planned for this afternoon. Their findings and their conclusions will provide a basis for our assessment, which will come after that. And this is not a one-off process. We have continued dialogue with Serbia because it's a country in the EU accession and it's in our immediate neighborhood. So the first opportunity to deliver our opinion and to discuss the way forward with the Serbian partners will be actually tonight when EUSR, the special representative Miroslav Lajčák, will be in Belgrade discussing with President Vučić a number of issues, mostly focused on the dialogue, but also, as I said, this is the first opportunity to deliver opinions and messages of the EU, and we will continue doing so after that. So stay put for the afternoon, and then we will say more on the conduct of the election and on the overall process.
Thank you very much, Peter. Tanya, would you have a follow-up for Peter? I understand this is not the case. If you wish to continue the conversation with Peter, you can call him bilaterally afterwards. Is there anyone else having questions for Peter on this topic or on any other? On this topic preferably, to start with. So I would invite colleagues to unraise their hands if they do not want to address Peter. And I believe Catherine Ferroe has a follow-up question for Peter. If that's the case, the floor is yours. Yes.
Yeah,
hi.
sure. Yeah, my question is this, Peter. If you aren't going to comment as European Commission on the elections, why did Oliver Várhelyi, the commissioner, do so? He said it was an important day for Serbia, and that it showed how they were committed to, and that the EU was committed to help Serbia move forward quickly towards EU accession and to support economic recovery. So that tweet came out 13 hours ago in the wake of the election. So why did he comment? Was it inappropriate for him to comment? Thank you.
Well, I would maybe just recall what I answered to Tanya, that it's not that we are not going to comment on the Serbian elections. We are not going to comment before the OEC or their special election assessment mission is going to issue their conclusions about the process. This is established practice. It will happen this afternoon. After that, we will also come out with our assessment of the election process. So it's that we are not commenting. Right now, we are waiting in line with the standard practice, first for the assessment of those who are most competent to provide the first assessment of the election process. And this will be done by the OEC or their mission this afternoon.
Thank you. I see Catherine's hand still raised. Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, so Peter, was it inappropriate for the commissioner to comment, therefore?
Well, as I understand, the commissioner who is in charge of maintaining the contact with Serbia as an EU candidate country was expressing his expectations to work together with Serbia, which is basically something we are doing anyway. We are working with Serbia and we are looking forward to work with Serbia, to continue our work with Serbia. We are looking forward to them delivering on their transformation, in doing the reforms which are necessary on the accession path. And we will continue to provide support, all our support to the people of Serbia to achieve this aspiration to get closer to the European Union and in the accession process. So Commissioner restated the line which is consistent, which is very clear, and we will stand by Serbia and we will work and continue to support Serbian people of Serbia in delivering on this very demanding process of accession and process of reforms.
Thank you, Peter. I understand that Tanya, too, has a follow-up question. So if that's the case, please.
Yes. Please, I would just like a comment on the fact that there was a boycott in Serbia, and why was there no mention on the part of the Commissioner or anyone else about this process being inclusive? Thank you.
Again, we are going to comment, or we are going to publish our assessment of the election and the election process, including all its aspects, including the one you are mentioning, once the ODIHR OEC mission assessment is out. And as I said, this is not one-off event. We have tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and the following weeks and months to address all the issues which we will then tackle in our first reaction. So bear with us for these few hours until the first preliminary report by the OEC ODIHR mission is out, and then we will come out with the EU assessment, and then we will be happy to discuss into the tiniest detail all what is related to Serbia, election process, and Serbia accession towards the EU.
So it's not a matter of not wanting to comment, but just commenting once we have the full picture based on the report. Thank you, Peter. I see Monchil's hand raised. Is your question for Peter?
Yes, it is.
And this.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
So it's, of course, again, about Serbia. So could the results of the elections in Serbia have any consequences for the path to the European integration of whole the region, I mean the Western Balkans?
Well, the Western Balkans has clear European perspective, and the European Union is engaged with each country in the process, accompanying them on their own road based on their own commitments and based on their own achievements. So I don't think it's correct to say that the results of election in one country would have impact on the speed or the depth or the quality of the accession process of other countries and other partners in the region.
But for example, is there any danger for a concrete country, in this case, for example, Serbia, to remain isolated from the rest of the region during the integration process? Is there theoretically such a danger?
Well, what we are focusing on is, first of all, to publish the assessment of the election process. What we are focusing on is maybe if you switch off your mic. Yes. Okay, thank you. So what we are focusing right now is to publish the assessment of the elections and the overall election process, and then take it from there to continue our dialogue or adjust our dialogue with Serbia. But I would not go into speculations and hypothetical scenarios right at this stage. It's a matter of few hours, so as I said, a little bit of patience, and then we can go in full detail of the whole process between the EU and Serbia.
Thank you very much, Peter. I see Nureddin's hand raised. I suspect this is a question for Peter as well, in which case the floor is yours.
Yeah. Good morning. The President Sisi of Egypt made a very firm speech during the weekend regarding the situation in Libya, which was... C'est bon? Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
On t'entendait très bien. So, Nureddin, if you can press speak. Again. I think we lost Nureddin.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it is okay. We give it another try.
Okay. Thank you. President Sisi made a very strong speech during the weekend towards the situation in Libya, which the GNA, the government of Tripoli, refused totally. The initiative as well as the threats of the Egyptian president. My question, what is the European Union reaction towards this crisis, which is possibly could evolve to a regional one between Egypt, with Turkey and others in the Libya area? And I have a second question regarding the communique issued by the E3 on Friday. We didn't see a European Union reaction to this communique, where the three countries' foreign affairs ministers are calling also to convene a foreign affairs minister of the Vienna Accord or the nuclear agreement. Is there any date, Peter, for that now? Thank you.
Thank you. So first, the Libya question. The people of Libya and Libya as a country and the whole region do not need more escalation. They do not need more confrontation. So in this light, the recent escalations of declarations and statements and the interference by outside actors is source of serious concern. And what is urgently needed is to diffuse the tensions. And the international actors involved in the conflict or having influence in the conflict should be working on diffusing the tensions, not to raise them. And the only responsible way, which is in the interest of the Libyan people, in the interest of the regional stability, is to focus on a negotiated solution to the Libyan crisis within the framework of the UN-led Berlin process, because this remains the only framework which allows to agree on a political solution for the country, which the country needs and which is long overdue. And it is also crucial to immediately cease all military activities across Libya and concentrate on the UN-led 5+5 talks to agree a permanent ceasefire or ceasefire that would lead to cessation of all the hostilities and pave the way for the political process and political talks, because this needs to be done to stop military actions and go and find a way to the negotiating table. On the second question regarding Iran and JCPOA, I have no date that I would be able to share with you, but since you mentioned this statement and asked about the E3 statement and asked about the EU reaction, I would just recall that the EU is coordinator of the treaty, is not signatory of the treaty, is not party of the treaty, but nevertheless, we strongly support JCPOA. The HRVP Josep Borrell, as the coordinator, continues to spare no effort to preserve this agreement and to make it work. And in this light, he welcomes the strong commitment by the foreign ministers of Germany, France and UK to preserve the JCPOA and continue to engage substantially with Iran, which is also party to this agreement, to address all the existing concerns. Because only the unity of the remaining participants of the JCPOA is key to preserve this treaty and to make it work.
Thank you very much, Peter. Are there any other questions for Peter? So please unraise your hands if your question isn't for Peter, and raise yours if you want to engage with him. So Oliver, your question is for Peter, I understand. In this case, go ahead. Oliver,
yes.
Green.
Hi. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Super. Great. Sorry, I'm late to the Serbia party, but I was just wondering, did the Commission ever raise the systematic use of disinformation, of thousands of fake Twitter accounts, and as was revealed last week by the investigative website Balkan Insight, by even about 1,500 bots by President Vučić and his party, in order both to create sort of a falsified image of public support for his policy, but also in order to go after his critics and opponents. So did you ever raise his systematic use of disinformation, of bots, of fake news, of the manipulation of social media? And as you know, of course, this was even flagged by Twitter. They took down thousands of fake accounts, and the only reaction of Vučić was he doesn't know what this is all about, he doesn't really bother. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. You know our ongoing work on fighting the disinformation. We have a dedicated team who is also focusing on the region of the Western Balkans. There is task force dedicated to Western Balkans. We are following, of course, what is going on in terms of disinformation, both within the Western Balkans or directed against or at Western Balkans countries. And this is an ongoing process with ongoing evaluations and issues being assessed, evaluated, raised, dealt with if necessary. And as I said, in the aftermath of these elections, there will be enough opportunities to raise, based on the assessments we are having or we will be having, to raise all the issues with our Serbian partners, because we think that it is very important, if there are doubts, if there are problems, to address them with the partners in order to help them to get to the European standards and deliver in the best way possible on their accession path towards the EU.
Thank you very much, Peter. Oliver's hand is still raised, which makes me think that he has a follow-up. If that's the case, go ahead, Oliver.
Yes, actually it's a follow-up. Thank you, Peter. My question actually was, did you raise this issue with President Vučić and or the Serbian government already? It's not whether this is about the Western Balkans in general. Twitter took down thousands of confirmed fake accounts linked to him, respectively his party, his political movement, I think in February already, was at the beginning of this year. Did you raise this with him before? Did you raise these matters? And if so, what would be the consequence? For example, would you at some point say, well, if you turn your country into a one-party state, also by manipulating the public space on social media, we might reconsider whether all this funding and support you get financially shouldn't be properly attached to conditions. Thank you.
Well, indeed, country in the accession process has to stick to EU criteria, and these criteria are being regularly assessed, and then you have the progress reports every year where we are assessing the progress the country is making in order to meet European standards. And of course, if we find something that is not in line with the European standards, then the member states have the possibility to either reduce or change or adjust or take the necessary actions. On your question, if we raised it with President Vučić, the nature of our work, be it on disinformation or be it on solving all the open issues or controversial issues or issues where we might have different opinions, is not to take them out necessarily to the public domain all the time. We have ongoing dialogue through various channels at various levels, and every time there is something that the EU, the Commission, the EAS, the member states see as a problem, we are raising this with the Serbian authorities, as we do with authorities in other partner countries. So that's why I said this is an ongoing process, and we are tackling all the issues which come up in the course of this process and are not in line with what we would wish to see from the partners in the accession process, because this might infringe on the criteria we are setting them to meet the European standards. So I would just underline once again, after the elections, we are going to publish the assessment. We will go into details of all the issues which might have come up during this election process or the events leading to the election processes, and we will be engaging even more and discussing with partners how to tackle it, how to remove it, how to change it if necessary. And not all of these might be necessarily discussed in the public domain first.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's pretty clear. Do we have any additional questions for Peter? I see no hands raised. In this case, I will invite the colleagues who wanted to ask other questions. I had a couple of hands raised before that. I invite them to raise them again. Yes, thank you, Peter. And now I will invite Thomas to ask his question. Thomas, the floor is yours. Please press speak.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. My question is on the pledging summit this weekend. So basically two questions. First, what is the role foreseen for the Commission President in that event? I remember the one early May when she was the host and kind of the center of everything. Will that be a similar role this weekend? And the second question, is there a pledging goal set as was the case in early May? Thank you.
Thank you very much for these questions, Thomas. So I will invite you to consider the weekend's events, so both the summit and the concert which follows it, as part of the pledging marathon that President von der Leyen launched herself on the 4th of May. At that time, we said that this is a series, this is a broader campaign which will encompass and will have several milestones. We started with a pledging conference which raised at that time almost 7.5 billion euros. In the meantime, in the weeks which followed, that amount has risen to about 10 billion euros. To keep up the momentum, the Commission launched on the 28th of May, together with Global Citizen, a broader campaign seeking to bring together civil society, philanthropists, as well as the private sector around the goal of providing a strong response to coronavirus by means of providing financial support for treatments, vaccines, and tests. So the goal was that to mobilize the world to provide means for coronavirus, for tackling coronavirus from a sort of scientific and medical point of view, but also one of making sure that we do that in an inclusive way and everybody everywhere will have access to those treatments which the world develops. As far as Saturday's events are concerned, they are an important milestone. I don't dare saying the final one, but clearly an important milestone of that global campaign, which President von der Leyen basically started and to which she offered her patronage on the 28th of May. And her role in both events is being fine-tuned this week. And allow me to declare that I prefer that you have a surprise as to exactly what her role will be. These are events which are under her patronage, and she will be co-hosting the summit as well as the concert. But for more details, I'm afraid you will have to wait Saturday. Stay tuned. I think it's going to be good. Any other questions? Thomas, you still have your hand raised. Oh, yes. It's probably because I forgot to tell you if there is any amount which we aim for. Apologies for that. No, at this stage, we have set no goal, no monetary goal, let's say no financial goal. The idea is to further increase the contributions through additional pledges, be them from governments, but also from philanthropists and from the business sector. Because, as we have always said, the initial goal that we announced of 7.5 billion euros was just the beginning. We all know that we would need much more, really much more, in order to support the development as well as the manufacturing and the deployment of treatments, starting with a vaccine perhaps, throughout the world. So no financial goal that has been set in detail this time. I see a question from Lorenzo. Is it on the same topic, Lorenzo? If so, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Sorry, it's not on the same topic.
Well, then allow me to ask if anyone else among colleagues has a question about the global coronavirus global response. I see no other hands raised. So in this case, Lorenzo, we can go back to you.
Okay. This is about a case that has been raised last week by our colleagues from Euractiv. Is in Bulgaria, and it's a case about this thiamethoxam. It's called. It is a neonicotinoid pesticide, and it has been banned by the EU in December 2018. And it has been used in Bulgaria in open spaces. This should be prohibited. and the company that has used it, which is Octopus, got also 11 millions from the Common Agricultural Policy funds. My question is the Commission taking any initiative about this? There is a double issue here. One is a prohibition which has not been respected, with the consequence that a lot of bees have died. And the second is that this company is even financed by the Commission. So is anything happening there, or you are just waiting for the Bulgarian state, which seems not interested in doing anything, to act? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. This is a question indeed which, as you say, had the opportunity to discuss last week when we had the opportunity to talk about the respective roles of the member states in the implementation and the monitoring of the implementation of the EU legislation on environment or on health-related matters. It has several angles. So for the first one, I will invite Stefan to tell you what it can from a health perspective.
Yes, Lorenzo, thank you very much for the question. I'm afraid that I will not be able to tell you much more than what I said last week, which is that on this specific case, we invite you indeed to contact the Bulgarian authorities, as it is, as also Dana just stressed, the national authorities, the member states that are responsible for the implementation and the enforcement of the EU bans in the area of, for instance, neonicotinoids, which is the substance the Euractiv article you referred to has mentioned. Now, as far as we are concerned, as I also stressed last week, the Commission takes a very cautious approach, as cautious as possible to protect, obviously, the bees, the health of which is very important. We therefore very closely monitor the relation between bee health and pesticides. We have taken a strong commitment in this area by severely restricting or banning the use of plant production products containing certain of these neonicotinoids. That's what I can say with regard to the health angle on this specific case. Maybe Daniel has to add something.
Yes. Indeed, I will now invite Daniel to join us on screen to cover any additional information he may provide on the Common Agricultural Policy related aspects, since you mentioned the fact that there were payments from the CAP involved to the companies in question. Daniel? Cannot hear you, Daniel, for one reason or another. Yes, it may be something with your connection. We are trying to look into this. Perhaps you give it another try. Daniel, let's try again. No, still no sound. I can see that you try, but we cannot hear you. So, unless we can fix that rapidly, because I can still see you speaking, but we cannot hear anything, I propose that we revert to you to cover this aspect later, once you have fixed your mic problem. So, that would probably leave Lorenzo with a follow-up, but there is no point in trying a follow-up on the agricultural-related aspects until we have Daniel fixing his audio problem. If you have a follow-up which concerns the health-related aspects, I would be most glad to give you the floor, Lorenzo.
Yes, I understand the answer that Stefano has given, and it was the same last time, but my question was not about who is responsible to implement in first place the ban on pesticides. My question is about what the Commission is doing. The Commission has the possibility to start infringement procedures, and if it is true that the Bulgarian state is not acting on this, is not interested in acting on this, as the inquiry from Euractiv shows, I mean, this is not a problem anymore only about the Bulgarian state implementing it. It's a problem for the Commission to make sure, to be sure that the ban is implemented. And so my question is, what about an infringement procedure against the Bulgarian state, which is not respecting the ban? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. Well, as I said, we take the health of bees obviously very important, which has led to this legislation. Again, it's up to member states to implement this legislation. The Commission will, of course, closely monitor what is happening with regard to the implementation of our EU legislation, and if need be, the Commission will take the necessary actions. But at this stage, I don't think I can say much more on this.
Thank you, Stefan. I understand that Daniel has solved his mic problem in the meantime, and he will make a new attempt to respond to Lorenzo on the CAP-related aspects. Daniel, can you talk to us now? I'm sorry, I can still see you speak, but
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's fine. Please go ahead.
Very good. What I can say is to repeat what we tried to explain already last Friday. We are aware of these media reports, and what we can do is to remind you how the rules, the Common Agricultural Policy rule apply. So any beneficiary of CAP subsidies has to comply with a series of rules, including EU directives.
That we lost you, Daniel. There is something going on with your sound system today.
Yeah.
Are you back, Daniel? I'm afraid it doesn't work, though we hear some background noise from your mic, so perhaps you give it another try? Yes, I am afraid that we cannot have Daniel to complete his answer. In this case, unless he can join us now with sound, I will just propose that we try to get back to you later. And if that fails...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can feel you. Now we can hear you. So
Okay.
Please give it another
try. I don't know
try.
if you can see me, but I'll give it another try just to basically to explain or reiterate what we had the chance already to explain last week, that when it comes to CAP, Common Agricultural Policies subsidies, the rules are very clear, and any beneficiary has to comply with all the relevant rules. Also, when it comes to the EU legislation in terms of pesticides. And if these rules are not respected, then the subsidies can be reduced or even withdrawn. But again, it's first and foremost, since these are funds that fall under the shared management responsibility, it's first and foremost for the national authorities to establish the facts and then to act in accordance and to implement the EU legislation, in particular the pesticides legislation and its cross-compliance system in the Common Agricultural Policy.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Do colleagues have any questions for Stefan, who's on stage, on the podium? I see no hand raised. Or for Daniel, whom we have the luck of having with audio on the line. No hand raised either, so thank you very much to both of you. Are there any other questions for us today on any other topic for any other spokesperson? I do not see any hand raised, so thank you very much for everybody. It was a pleasure being with you, and see you soon.